Every Friday she ordered 2 meals, one for herself and one for the ghost of a marriage that destroyed her. But when a stranger asked to join her table, she had no idea he was the CEO who helped tear her life apart.
Excuse me, is this seat taken?
Actually, it is. Then again, maybe not.
It was supposed to be coincidence, 2 lonely souls finding comfort in shared pain. But he knew exactly who she was from the moment he sat down.
I should have told you who I was from the beginning.
You've been lying to me for weeks. You had files on me, Eli. What is this?
The man whose company gave her ex-husband the money to destroy her in court was the same man who made her feel alive again. Can love survive the ultimate betrayal? And will she choose forgiveness? Or walk away from the first man to heal her broken heart? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The Friday evening crowd at Bellini's Italian restaurant in Charleston filled the cozy space with chatter and laughter. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, everyone except Naomi Clark. She sat alone in the corner booth by the window, her dark, curly hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. At 33, she was beautiful without trying, but tonight her eyes held that familiar sadness they'd carried for months. She glanced at her watch. 7 o'clock, just like always. For 8 years, this had been their spot. Hers and David's. Now it was just hers, though she couldn't seem to break the habit of ordering for 2. "Your usual, Mrs. Clark?" asked Monica, the waitress who had served them all those Friday nights. Naomi smiled weakly. "Yes, please. The salmon with lemon risotto and—" She paused, swallowing hard. "And the steak with garlic potatoes." Monica gave her a sympathetic nod. She'd stopped asking if someone was joining Naomi 3 months ago. Everyone at Bellini's knew about the divorce. "Coming right up," Monica said gently. Naomi stared out the window at the Charleston street. People walked by holding hands, laughing, living their lives. She'd been trying to do the same since signing those papers, but something kept pulling her back to this booth, to this ritual that made no sense to anyone, especially her sister. "You can't keep doing this," Alicia had told her just that morning. "Ordering food for a man who left you? It's not healthy, Naomi." "I'm not ordering for him," she had lied. "I just like having leftovers." But the truth was, she never ate the second meal. It just sat there, getting cold, like the marriage she couldn't seem to let go of. The restaurant door opened, bringing in a gust of warm evening air. A tall man in a crisp blue suit walked in, his presence commanding attention without trying. He spoke briefly with the hostess, who gestured apologetically at the crowded restaurant. "I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett," Naomi overheard the hostess saying. "There's at least a 45-minute wait." The man, Mr. Bennett, ran a hand through his short brown hair, looking tired. "That's fine, I'll wait." Something about his voice made Naomi look up. There was a quietness to it, a gentleness that didn't match his powerful appearance. Their eyes met briefly across the restaurant, and she quickly looked away. Monica returned with 2 plates, setting them carefully on the table. The salmon for her, the steak across from her. Empty chair, full plate. The story of her life these days. "Can I get you anything else?" Monica asked. "No, thank you," Naomi replied, picking up her fork even though her appetite had vanished. A shadow fell across her table. She looked up to find the man in the blue suit standing there, his eyes fixed not on her but on the untouched steak. "Excuse me," he said, his voice low and measured. "Is this seat taken?" Naomi's reply was automatic, the same one she'd given the few other times someone had tried to take the chair. "Actually, it is." But the man didn't move. Instead, he looked at her with eyes that held no pity, just a quiet understanding that made her breath catch. Then again, she found herself saying, "Maybe not." Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe. "Thank you. The wait is 45 minutes, and it's been a very long day." He extended his hand. "Eli Bennett." "Naomi Clark," she replied, shaking his hand briefly. Eli sat down across from her, careful not to disturb the plate of food. "I'm not trying to intrude on your dinner," he said. "Just looking for a place to sit." "It's fine," Naomi said, feeling strangely calm about this disruption to her ritual. That food was just going to go to waste anyway. Eli's eyes moved to the steak, then back to her face. "May I ask why you ordered it then?" The question should have felt invasive, but somehow it didn't. Maybe it was his tone, curious, not judgmental. "Old habits," she said simply. He nodded, as if that explained everything, and somehow it did. Monica appeared at their table, surprise evident on her face at seeing someone in that chair. "Oh, would you like a menu, sir?" "Just a glass of red wine, please," Eli said. "Whatever you recommend." After Monica left, an awkward silence fell between them. Naomi picked at her salmon, suddenly aware of how strange this must seem to him. "You don't have to sit with me," she said. "I'm sure they can find you another table. Do you want me to leave?" he asked directly. The question caught her off guard. Did she? For months she'd been sitting across from an empty chair, talking occasionally to a ghost. Having a real person there was different. "No," she said finally. "You can stay." Eli smiled then, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you. It's been a while since I've had dinner with someone." The simple confession made her look at him more carefully. Despite his expensive suit and confident demeanor, there was a loneliness in his eyes that matched her own. "So," she said, taking a bite of her risotto, "what brings you to Bellini's?" "I used to come here with my wife," he said, then stopped, as if surprised by his own honesty. "It was our favorite place." The past tense hung between them. Used to, was. She recognized the language of loss. "And now?" she asked. Eli accepted the wine Monica brought, taking a small sip before answering. "Now I come alone, not often, just sometimes." They fell into an easy silence after that, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Naomi ate her salmon while Eli drank his wine, both of them looking occasionally out the window at the passing world. "Your steak is getting cold," Eli said finally, nodding toward the untouched plate. "It always does," Naomi replied with a sad smile. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Divorce?" She nodded. 8 months ago. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was my choice." She set down her fork. "Everyone told me to fix it instead of leave, but some things can't be fixed." Eli looked down at his wine glass. "Some things can't," he agreed quietly. When Naomi's phone rang, she was surprised to see how much time had passed. She pulled it from her purse and saw her sister's name on the screen. "Excuse me," she said to Eli, then answered. "Hey, Alicia, are you still at that restaurant?" Her sister's exasperated voice came through. "Please tell me you're not ordering 2 meals again." Naomi glanced at Eli, who was politely looking away. "Actually, I'm having dinner with someone." The shocked silence on the other end was almost comical. "A man?" Alicia finally asked. "Yes, a man," Naomi confirmed, feeling strangely defensive. "I have to go. I'll call you tomorrow." She hung up and put the phone away, feeling Eli's curious gaze on her. "Sister," she explained. "She worries." "That's what family does," he said with a small smile. The waiter came by to clear Naomi's empty plate. "Would you like me to wrap this up?" he asked, gesturing to the untouched steak. Naomi looked at Eli, then back at the steak. "No," she said finally. "But could we get the check, please?" After paying, they insisted on splitting it despite Eli's protests. They walked out into the warm Charleston evening together. "Thank you for sharing your table," Eli said, standing a respectful distance from her on the sidewalk. "Thank you for—" She paused, not sure what she was thanking him for, not asking too many questions, understanding the empty chair. "For the company." He smiled that genuine smile again. It was nice not to eat alone for a change. They stood there awkwardly, two strangers who had somehow shared something intimate without trying. "Well, good night," Naomi said finally, turning to leave. "Naomi," Eli called after her. She turned back. "I come here every Friday, just so you know." She felt something flutter in her chest. Not excitement exactly, but possibility. "So do I." "Maybe next Friday," he suggested. "We could share a table again, if you want." The sensible thing would be to say no, to break the pattern, to stop coming to this restaurant altogether. But Naomi found herself nodding. "Same time?" "Same time," he confirmed. As Naomi drove home, she realized she hadn't thought about David once during dinner. The empty chair had been filled, if only for an hour, and the weight she carried felt just a little lighter. Her phone rang again as she pulled into her driveway. Alicia, of course. "Tell me everything," her sister demanded when she answered. "There's nothing to tell," Naomi said, getting out of her car. "He's just a nice man who needed a table." "A nice man who's taking you to dinner next Friday," Alicia said slyly. Naomi sighed. "We're just sharing a table, not dating." "Naomi, it's been 8 months. You need to start living again." "I am living," Naomi protested, unlocking her front door. The dark, empty house greeted her with silence. "No, you're existing. There's a difference." Naomi kicked off her shoes and sank onto her couch. "I'm not ready, Alicia. You'll never be ready if you don't try," her sister said gently. "Just promise me you'll keep an open mind about this guy." "His name is Eli," Naomi said, "and there's nothing to have an open mind about. He's just someone to talk to." After hanging up, Naomi sat in the quiet of her living room. On the mantel, a wedding photo still stood, though she'd taken down most of the others. She and David, smiling, clueless about what was coming. She should put it away, but something always stopped her. Across town, in a spacious penthouse apartment, Eli Bennett loosened his tie and poured himself another glass of wine. The city lights twinkled beyond his floor-to-ceiling windows, but he wasn't seeing them. His mind was on Naomi, her sad eyes, her gentle voice, the way she ordered a meal for someone who would never eat it. He walked to his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a folder labeled Clark Enterprises. David Clark's company photo stared up at him, alongside financial reports and acquisition paperwork. Eli closed the folder and put it away. He hadn't planned to meet David's ex-wife tonight. He hadn't planned to sit across from her and see the pain her ex-husband had caused. He certainly hadn't planned to ask to see her again, but something about Naomi Clark had reached through the numbness he'd lived in for 2 years since Catherine's death. Something about her made him feel almost alive again. His phone rang and his brother's name flashed on the screen. "Hello, James," he answered. "Did you sign those papers?" James asked without greeting. "Not yet," Eli replied, looking out at the night sky. "What's the holdup? You've been dragging your feet on this deal for weeks." Eli sighed. "I need more time." "Is this about Catherine? Because she wouldn't want—" "Don't!" Eli cut him off sharply. "Don't tell me what she would want." A tense silence followed. "You need to move forward, Eli," James said finally. "It's been 2 years. 2 years. 730 days without her, and not a single one had passed where he didn't think of her." "I'll sign the papers next week," Eli said. After hanging up, he walked to the bedroom and opened the closet door. Catherine's clothes still hung on one side, untouched since the day she died. Her perfume, faded now, still lingered on the fabric. Eli closed the door and turned away. For the first time in a long time, the ache in his chest felt different. Not gone, but changed somehow. His thoughts returned to Naomi and the way she'd looked at him when he asked to sit down, like she was seeing a reflection of her own pain, like she understood what it meant to keep an empty chair filled. Next Friday couldn't come soon enough. The following morning, Naomi woke to the sound of her doorbell. She pulled on a robe and went to answer it, finding Alicia standing there with coffee and pastries. "Morning, sunshine," her sister said, brushing past her into the house. "I brought breakfast." "It's 7:30 on a Saturday," Naomi grumbled, following her to the kitchen. "And you need to tell me about this mystery man," Alicia said, setting down the coffee cups. At 35, Alicia was the more practical sister. Married, 2 kids, a job as a hospital administrator. She lived her life according to plan, which made Naomi's divorce all the more baffling to her. "There's nothing to tell," Naomi insisted, taking a grateful sip of coffee. "His name is Eli Bennett. He needed a table. We talked." "Eli Bennett," Alicia repeated, her eyebrows raising. "Why does that name sound familiar?" Naomi shrugged. "No idea. He's just some businessman." "Did he say what he does?" "No, and I didn't ask. We didn't talk about work." Alicia looked skeptical. "What did you talk about then?" Naomi thought back to their conversation. "Nothing really and everything. That makes no sense." "It doesn't have to," Naomi said. "It was just dinner." Alicia studied her sister's face. "You like him." "I just met him." "But you're seeing him again," Naomi sighed. "We're sharing a table at a busy restaurant, that's all." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't quite true. There had been something in the way Eli looked at her, not with pity or judgment, but with recognition, like he saw past the brave face she put on for everyone else. "Just be careful," Alicia said, suddenly serious. "You're vulnerable right now." "I'm not going to marry the guy," Naomi said with an eye roll. "We're just having dinner." Little did she know that across town, Eli Bennett was sitting in his office, staring at a photograph of Naomi and her ex-husband that had been included in the company acquisition files. In it, she was smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes, not like the sad one she'd given him last night. "Who are you, Naomi Clark?" he murmured. "And what would you do if you knew who I really was?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, but soon, very soon, he would find out. And everything would change. For the next 3 Fridays, Naomi and Eli met at Bellini's. Each week, she arrived first and took their corner booth. Each week, she ordered only one meal, her salmon with lemon risotto. And each week, Eli arrived precisely at 7, his tired eyes lighting up when he saw her. They fell into an easy rhythm, these dinners. Sometimes they talked about small things, books they'd read, places they'd traveled, the changing Charleston weather. Other times they sat in comfortable silence, 2 people who somehow understood that words weren't always necessary. What they didn't talk about was more telling. She never mentioned David by name, and he never spoke about what had happened to his wife. The past hung between them, acknowledged but untouched. On the fourth Friday, Naomi arrived to find Eli already at their table, a bottle of wine waiting. "You're early," she said, sliding into her seat. "Meeting finished sooner than expected," he replied, pouring her a glass. "I hope you don't mind." "Not at all." She accepted the wine, noticing how relaxed he seemed tonight. His suit jacket was draped over the chair, his tie loosened. "Good day at work?" "Productive," he said with a small smile. "Though my brother would disagree." "You work with your brother?" "Unfortunately," Eli said, though his tone was affectionate. "James thinks I'm too cautious. I think he's too impulsive. It makes for interesting board meetings." "What exactly do you do?" Naomi asked, realizing she still knew almost nothing about his professional life. Eli hesitated, swirling the wine in his glass. "I'm in sustainable design. My company develops eco-friendly building solutions." "Sounds impressive," Naomi said. "It's just work," he shrugged. "What about you? You've never mentioned what you do." "I'm a graphic designer," she said. "Freelance now. I used to work for an advertising firm, but after the divorce, She trailed off. "After the divorce?" Eli prompted gently. Naomi sighed. "After the divorce, I needed a change. Too many memories at the old job. Too many people who knew us as a couple." She took a sip of wine. "So I started my own business. It's small, but it's mine." "That takes courage," Eli said, his eyes warm with admiration. "Or desperation," she replied with a self-deprecating laugh. Monica arrived to take their orders. "The usual, Miss Clark?" "Yes, please," Naomi confirmed. "And for you, Mr. Bennett?" "I'll try the salmon tonight," Eli said, glancing at Naomi. "I've been watching her enjoy it for weeks now." After Monica left, Naomi felt a flutter of nervousness. These dinners had become important to her, a bright spot in her otherwise solitary life, but she still knew so little about this man. "Eli," she began hesitantly, "can I ask you something personal?" He tensed slightly but nodded. "Your wife," she said softly. "What happened?" Pain flickered across his face, so raw it made her regret the question immediately. "I'm sorry," she backtracked. "You don't have to—" "No," he interrupted. "It's okay." He took a deep breath. "Catherine died 2 years ago. Car accident. She was coming home from visiting her mother when a truck crossed the center line." Naomi reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. "I'm so sorry. It was quick," he said, his voice hollow. "That's what they told me. She didn't suffer." They sat in silence, her hand still on his. "Do you have a picture?" Naomi asked gently. Eli seemed surprised by the question but pulled out his wallet. From it, he extracted a slightly worn photograph of a beautiful woman with auburn hair and a bright smile. This was taken 6 months before she died, at her favorite beach in the Outer Banks. Naomi studied the photo. "She looks kind." "She was," Eli said, his voice softening. "The kindest person I've ever known. She volunteered at a children's hospital every weekend. The kids adored her." "She sounds wonderful." "She was," he repeated, carefully returning the photo to his wallet. "What about your ex-husband? What's he like?" Naomi withdrew her hand, surprised by the question. "David is complicated, ambitious, driven. Work always came first." "Is that why you left?" She shook her head. "Not exactly. We just grew apart. And then I found out he'd been lying about some things. Important things." "Like what?" Eli asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Financial issues with his company. Meetings that weren't really meetings." She looked down at her wineglass. "Another woman." Eli's jaw tightened. "He cheated on you?" "He says no, but—" Naomi shrugged. "There were too many late nights, too many unexplained absences, and when I confronted him, he couldn't look me in the eye." Their food arrived, providing a welcome interruption. They ate in silence for a few minutes. "Alicia, my sister, thinks I gave up too easily," Naomi confessed. "She says marriage is hard work, and I should have tried harder." "Do you think that?" Eli asked. Naomi considered the question. "Sometimes, when I'm sitting in my house alone. When I come here and order food, no one will eat. But other times I know I did the right thing," she said firmly. "I couldn't stay with someone I couldn't trust." Eli nodded slowly. "Trust is everything." The words hung between them, laden with meaning neither was ready to explore. After dinner, they walked outside together, as they always did. But tonight, instead of saying a quick goodbye, Eli asked, "Would you like to walk for a while? It's a beautiful evening." Naomi hesitated only briefly before nodding. They strolled along the waterfront, the warm evening breeze carrying the scent of salt water and jasmine. "Tell me about your sister," Eli said as they walked. Alicia is the responsible one, Naomi said with a smile. 2 kids, perfect husband, big house in the suburbs. She has everything figured out, or at least she thinks she does. You don't sound convinced. I love her, but she sees the world in black and white, right and wrong. Stay married or get divorced. Move on or stay stuck. And you see the grey areas, Eli observed. Life is nothing but grey areas, Naomi replied. They stopped at a bench overlooking the harbour and sat down. The moonlight sparkled on the water, boats gently rocking with the tide. This is nice, Naomi said softly. Yes, Eli agreed, his eyes on her face rather than the view. It is. Something had shifted between them tonight. The careful distance they'd maintained was closing, slowly but surely. Naomi, Eli began, his voice serious. There's something I need to tell you. Her heart quickened. What is it? Before he could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. I'm sorry, I have to take this. It's my brother. He stood and walked a few steps away to answer. Naomi watched him, noting the sudden tension in his shoulders as he spoke. When he returned, his expression was troubled. Everything okay? She asked. Just business, he said, not meeting her eyes. I'm sorry, but I need to go. Oh, Naomi tried to hide her disappointment. Of course. Can I drive you home? I have my car, she reminded him. Right. He ran a hand through his hair, looking distracted. Naomi, what I was going to say, it can wait until next Friday, she said, giving him an out. Relief and regret battled in his eyes. Next Friday, he confirmed. He walked her back to her car, the easy companionship of earlier, replaced by an awkward tension. At her car door he hesitated, then leaned in and kissed her cheek softly. Good night, Naomi. Good night, Eli. She watched him walk away, wondering what he'd been about to tell her and why it had seemed so important. Across town, in his modern high-rise apartment, Eli paced back and forth. His brother James sat on the couch, watching him with growing impatience. You need to sign these papers, James insisted, gesturing to the documents on the coffee table. The board is getting restless. We can't keep the Clark acquisition in limbo forever. I know, Eli said, stopping to look out at the city lights. It's just complicated. It's business, Eli. Nothing complicated about it. We buy companies, we restructure them, we make them profitable. James studied his brother's face. Unless there's something you're not telling me. Eli turned to face him. I've been spending time with David Clark's ex-wife. James's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? Her name is Naomi. We've been having dinner. Please tell me this is some kind of negotiation strategy, James said incredulously. It's not like that, Eli said firmly. I met her by chance. By chance, James repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. At Bellini's, the restaurant you never go to because it reminds you too much of Catherine. Eli didn't answer. Does she know who you are? James asked. Does she know you're the one who bought out her ex-husband's company right as they were divorcing? The deal that gave him the cash to fight her in court? No, Eli admitted quietly. James stood up, shaking his head. This is a disaster waiting to happen. End it now before she finds out and causes problems for the company. It's not that simple. It is that simple, James insisted. You sign these papers, you stop seeing her, and you get back to running the company that Catherine helped you build. The mention of his late wife's name hit Eli like a physical blow. Don't bring her into this. She is in this, James said more gently. Everything you do is still about her. You haven't moved on, Eli. You're haunted. And now you're projecting those feelings onto this woman. A woman whose life was turned upside down, partly because of our company's actions. Eli sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. I like her, James. She's different. Different from Catherine, you mean? Different from anyone, Eli corrected. She understands loss. She doesn't push me to get over it or move on like everyone else does. James sighed, sitting back down. Look, I get it. I miss Catherine too. She was the best sister-in-law anyone could ask for. But this thing with the Clark woman is going to blow up in your face. Her name is Naomi, Eli said firmly. Fine, Naomi. James leaned forward. What happens when Naomi finds out who you really are? Have you thought about that? The truth was, Eli had thought of little else since their first dinner together. Every time he sat across from her, every time she smiled at him, every time their conversation flowed so easily, he felt the weight of his secret growing heavier. I'll tell her, Eli said. Next Friday. James looked skeptical but nodded. Okay, but sign these papers tonight. The acquisition needs to move forward. After his brother left, Eli pulled out his phone and stared at it for a long moment before dialing. Hello? Naomi's sleepy voice answered. I'm sorry, did I wake you? Eli asked. Eli? She sounded more alert now. Is everything okay? Yes. No. I don't know. He took a deep breath. Can we meet tomorrow? I need to talk to you. There was a pause. Sure, she said finally. Where? Not Bellini's. Somewhere more private. He thought for a moment. There's a park near the waterfront. Hampton Park. Do you know it? Yes, I know it. Can you meet me there at noon? By the fountain? Okay, she agreed, curiosity in her voice. Should I be worried? No, he said quickly. It's just something I need to tell you in person. After they hung up, Eli walked to his desk and pulled out the folder on Clark Enterprises. David Clark's smug face stared up at him from the company profile. According to their research, Clark had been running his company into the ground for years, taking out loans he couldn't repay, making promises to investors he couldn't keep. When Bennett Sustainable Design had made an offer to buy him out, he jumped at it, especially since the divorce proceedings had already begun. What the report didn't mention was how the deal had affected Naomi, but Eli had done his own research after meeting her. The sudden influx of cash had given David the resources to hire an expensive lawyer, one who had managed to shield much of his new wealth from the divorce settlement. Naomi had walked away with far less than she deserved, and Eli's company had made it possible. He closed the folder, his decision made. Tomorrow he would tell her everything, even if it meant losing her. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Naomi woke early, feeling strangely nervous about her meeting with Eli. She called Alicia while getting dressed. He called you at midnight to arrange a park meeting, her sister asked, sounding suspicious. That's weird, Naomi. It's not weird, Naomi defended, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. He just said he needs to talk to me. About what? I don't know, that's why I'm meeting him. Alicia sighed. I still think there's something off about this guy. The way he just happened to be at your restaurant, at your table. It's not my restaurant, Naomi said, exasperated. And it was a busy night, there were no other tables. Have you Googled him? Alicia asked. No, and I'm not going to, that's stalking. It's called being careful, Alicia countered. At least tell me his full name. Eli Bennett, Naomi said, giving in. But don't go crazy with the background check, okay? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Alicia, Eli Bennett, her sister repeated slowly. As in Bennett Sustainable Design? I don't know. He said he's in Sustainable Design, but he didn't mention the company name. Naomi, Alicia's voice was suddenly serious. Bennett Sustainable Design is the company that bought out David's business during your divorce. It's run by Eli Bennett and his brother James. Naomi felt the room spin slightly. That can't be right. It is right. I remember because David wouldn't stop talking about it when he came to pick up his things that last time. He said the Bennett brothers were sharks in designer suits. The phone nearly slipped from Naomi's hand as the implications hit her. He knows, she whispered. He's known who I am this whole time. What are you going to do? Alicia asked. Naomi looked at her watch. 11:30. I'm going to meet him, she said, her voice hardening. And I'm going to find out exactly what game he's playing. Hampton Park was busy with weekend visitors, families picnicking, couples walking hand in hand, children chasing each other across the green lawns. Naomi spotted Eli immediately, standing by the fountain just as he'd said. He wore casual clothes today, jeans and a button-down shirt, and looked younger somehow, more vulnerable. For a moment, watching him from a distance, she almost turned around and left, but the hurt and anger propelled her forward. Naomi, he said when he saw her, relief evident in his voice. Thank you for coming. Bennett Sustainable Design, she said, without preamble. His face fell. You know, I just found out. She crossed her arms over her chest. Were you ever going to tell me, or was this some kind of sick game to you? That's why I asked you here today, he said quietly. To tell you everything. Why should I believe you? She demanded. You've been lying to me for weeks. I haven't lied, he countered. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. People nearby were starting to look at them. Eli gestured to a more secluded bench beneath a large oak tree. Can we sit, please? Reluctantly, Naomi followed him to the bench. They sat with a careful distance between them. I didn't plan to meet you that night, Eli began. I knew who you were when I approached your table. I'd seen your photo in the company files, but I hadn't gone there looking for you. Then why were you there? He looked down at his hands. It was Catherine's favorite restaurant. I go there sometimes to feel close to her. Despite her anger, Naomi felt a pang of sympathy. So it was just coincidence. Yes, he said, meeting her eyes. But once I met you, once we started talking, I should have told you who I was. I know that. I didn't know how. You had 4 weeks of dinners to figure it out, she pointed out, and every week I told myself I would, he admitted. But then we'd talk, and it would be so easy, so comfortable. I didn't want to ruin it. Well, you've ruined it now, Naomi said, standing up. Goodbye, Eli. Naomi, wait. He stood too, reaching for her hand, but stopping short of taking it. There's more you need to know. What more could there possibly be? She asked, her voice breaking. The acquisition of your ex-husband's company. It wasn't personal, it was business. But the timing, how it gave him the resources to fight you in the divorce. Naomi stared at him. You know about my divorce settlement? Eli nodded, looking ashamed. After I met you, I looked into it. David used the money from our acquisition to hire Bartlett and Associates. The best divorce attorneys in the state, Naomi said bitterly. I wondered how he could afford them. I'm sorry, Eli said simply. If I had known what? That he was cheating on me? That he'd been lying about the company finances for years? That he would use every dirty trick to keep me from getting what I deserved in the divorce? Naomi felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. You couldn't have known any of that, but you could have been honest with me from the beginning. Eli looked stricken. You're right. The simple admission deflated some of her anger. She sat back down on the bench, suddenly tired. Why tell me now? She asked. Eli sat beside her, careful to maintain the distance between them. Because I care about you, more than I expected to, more than I've cared about anyone since Catherine died. The confession hung in the air between them, too significant to acknowledge, too important to ignore. I don't know what to say to that, Naomi finally replied. You don't have to say anything, Eli assured her. I understand if you never want to see me again. She looked at him then, really looked at him. The pain in his eyes matched her own, the pain of loss, of betrayal, of trying to find your way back to living after everything falls apart. I need time, she said at last, to think about all this. Relief flooded his face. Take all the time you need. They sat in silence for a long moment, watching a family with young children feed the ducks at the pond's edge. I won't be at Bellini's next Friday, Naomi said finally. Eli nodded, accepting her decision. I understand. But as she walked away, leaving him alone on the bench, Naomi wasn't sure she understood anything anymore. Not her feelings for Eli, not her lingering attachment to a failed marriage, not the path forward from here. All she knew was that the careful rhythm of her life had been disrupted once again, and she had no idea how to find her way back. 2 weeks passed without a word between Naomi and Eli. She avoided Bellini's on Fridays, ordering takeout instead and eating alone at home. The empty feeling in her chest grew with each passing day, but she couldn't sort out how much was about Eli and how much was about David and the divorce all over again. Alicia checked on her daily, sometimes bringing her kids along as a distraction. Today they sat in Naomi's backyard, while 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Jack chased each other around the small garden. You look terrible, Alicia said, handing Naomi a glass of iced tea. Thanks, Naomi replied dryly. Just what every woman wants to hear. Have you heard from him? Naomi shook her head. No, and I haven't tried to contact him either. Good, Alicia said firmly. The man lied to you. He didn't exactly lie, Naomi found herself saying. He just didn't tell me everything. Alicia raised an eyebrow. Are you defending him now? No, Naomi sighed. It's complicated. It's really not, Alicia insisted. He knew who you were from the beginning. He knew his company helped David cheat you in the divorce, and he said nothing for weeks while pretending to be your friend. Friend. The word didn't seem adequate for what Eli had become to her in those few short weeks. He had been the first person since the divorce who made her feel seen, who understood her pain without trying to fix it. I miss him, Naomi admitted quietly. Alicia's expression softened. Oh, honey, I know it's crazy. I barely know him, and what I do know is problematic. That's one way to put it, Alicia muttered. But when I was with him, I felt, I don't know, less broken. Alicia reached over and squeezed her hand. You're not broken, Naomi. You're healing. There's a difference. Before Naomi could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at it, expecting Eli's name. Instead, she saw David Clark on the screen. It's David, she said, surprised. She hadn't heard from her ex-husband in months. Don't answer it, Alicia advised immediately. But Naomi was already hitting the accept button. Hello? Naomi, David's smooth voice came through the speaker. How are you? Fine, she said cautiously. What do you want, David? Can't a man call his ex-wife to check in? You haven't checked in since the divorce was finalized, Naomi pointed out. So again, what do you want? There was a pause. I heard you've been spending time with Eli Bennett. Naomi felt a chill. How did you know that? Charleston is a small town, David said vaguely. People talk. My personal life is none of your business. It is when you're getting cozy with the man who ruined me, David said, his voice hardening. Ruined you? Naomi repeated incredulously. Last I checked, you walked away from our marriage with a lot more than I did, thanks to Bennett's company. That deal was supposed to set me up for life, David said bitterly. Instead, they stripped the company bare, fired half my staff, and left me with barely enough to cover my legal bills. Alicia was watching Naomi with concern, mouthing, "What's going on?" Naomi held up a finger, focusing on the call. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know what kind of man you're dealing with," David replied. "Eli Bennett is ruthless in business. He'll be ruthless with you too." "You don't know anything about him," Naomi said defensively. "I know his company's playbook. Buy failing businesses, gut them, and sell off the profitable parts. He doesn't care who gets hurt in the process." Naomi thought of Eli's gentle eyes, his quiet voice, the way he listened to her as if everything she said mattered. It didn't match David's description at all. "I have to go," she said. "Just be careful, Naomi," David said, his voice suddenly softer. "I don't want to see you get hurt again." The words might have seemed caring if they had come from anyone else, but from David they felt manipulative, just like everything else in their marriage had been. "Goodbye, David," she said firmly, and hung up. "What did he want?" Alicia asked immediately. "To warn me about Eli," Naomi said, still processing the conversation. "He said Bennett's Sustainable Design gutted his company after buying it." "And you believe him?" Alicia asked skeptically. "I don't know what to believe anymore," Naomi admitted. After Alicia and the kids left, Naomi sat at her computer and typed Bennett's Sustainable Design into the search engine. Dozens of results appeared. Business articles, press releases, interviews. She clicked on the company website first. The homepage featured a sleek design with images of modern, eco-friendly buildings. The About Us section had a photo of Eli and a slightly younger man who must be his brother James, both in expensive suits, standing in front of their headquarters. Bennett's Sustainable Design was founded by brothers Eli and James Bennett, with a mission to transform how we think about construction and urban development, the text read. With a focus on environmental responsibility and community impact, BDS has become a leader in green architecture and sustainable business practices. It didn't sound like the corporate raiders David had described, but then again, what company would advertise itself that way? Naomi dug deeper, reading news articles about their acquisitions and business practices. Most were positive, praising their innovative approach and commitment to sustainability. But there were a few that mentioned layoffs and restructuring after acquisitions, including one about Clark Enterprises. Following the acquisition of Clark Enterprises by Bennett Sustainable Design, approximately 30% of the workforce was let go as part of a restructuring effort, one article stated. CEO Eli Bennett defended the move as necessary to align the company with BDS's sustainability goals. Naomi sat back, conflicted. Was this the ruthless businessman David described, or the thoughtful man who had sat across from her at Bellini's? Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Naomi Clark?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "James Bennett, Eli's brother." Naomi nearly dropped the phone. "How did you get my number?" "That's not important," James said dismissively. "What's important is that you stay away from my brother." "Excuse me?" Naomi said, anger rising. "Eli isn't thinking clearly where you're concerned," James continued. "He hasn't been himself since Catherine died. He's vulnerable, and I won't let you take advantage of that." "Take advantage?" Naomi repeated, incredulous. "I'm not the one who hid my identity for weeks." There was a pause. "So he told you?" "Yes, he told me. 2 weeks ago. I haven't spoken to him since." Another pause. "I see. Well, keep it that way. Eli has a company to run. He doesn't need complications like you." "Complications like me," Naomi echoed, her voice cold. "You know nothing about me, Mr. Bennett." "I know you're David Clark's ex-wife," James said bluntly. "I know your divorce was messy. And I know you've been having dinner with my brother every Friday for over a month. Your point?" "My point is that Eli is finally starting to move forward after losing Catherine. He's finally focusing on the company again. I won't let you drag him back into grief just because you're lonely after your divorce." The words stung more than Naomi wanted to admit. "You have no right to speak to me this way." "I have every right when it comes to protecting my brother and our company," James insisted. "Stay away from him, Miss Clark. It's better for everyone." The line went dead before she could respond. Naomi stared at her phone, seething with anger and hurt. First David, now James. Men who thought they could dictate her life, her choices, her relationships. She had half a mind to call Eli right then, just to spite them both. But what would she say? That she missed their dinners, that despite everything she couldn't stop thinking about him. Before she could talk herself out of it, Naomi grabbed her purse and keys and headed for her car. She didn't have a plan, just an overwhelming need to see Eli, to hear his side of the story without David or James, or even Alicia's interpretations clouding her judgment. The Bennett Sustainable Design headquarters was a modern glass building downtown, impossible to miss with its distinctive curved facade and rooftop garden. Naomi parked across the street, suddenly unsure. What was she doing here? It was Saturday. Eli probably wasn't even working, but as she watched, a familiar figure emerged from the building. Eli, in casual clothes similar to what he'd worn at the park, looked tired as he walked to his car in the parking lot. Before she could change her mind, Naomi got out of her car and called his name. "Eli!" He turned, his eyes widening when he saw her. "Naomi!" She crossed the street, heart pounding. "I need to talk to you." "Here?" he asked, glancing around. "Somewhere private," she said. He nodded, relief and wariness battling in his expression. "My apartment is nearby. We could talk there, unless that makes you uncomfortable." "That's fine," she agreed, following him to his car. The drive was silent, neither knowing quite what to say after 2 weeks apart. Eli's apartment building was as impressive as his office, a luxury high-rise with views of the harbor. His penthouse was spacious and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture. But it was the little touches that caught Naomi's attention. Books everywhere, a half-finished chess game on a side table, photos of what must be family members. "Would you like something to drink?" Eli asked, clearly nervous. "Water, wine, coffee?" "Water is fine," Naomi said, still taking in her surroundings. On the mantel was a photo of Eli and Catherine, both smiling, their arms around each other on a beach. Eli handed her a glass of water and followed her gaze to the photo. "That was our last vacation together," he said quietly. "Outer Banks, 6 months before she died." "She was beautiful," Naomi said. "Yes," Eli agreed. "Inside and out." Naomi took a deep breath. "I got a call from David today." Eli's expression darkened. "What did he want?" "To warn me about you," she said honestly. "He said your company destroyed his business, that you fired half his staff and left him with nothing." "That's not exactly true," Eli said, gesturing for her to sit on the couch. He sat in an armchair across from her. "Clark Enterprises was failing long before we acquired it. David had been mismanaging it for years. When we took over, we had to make cuts to save the business at all." "So you did fire people?" Naomi pressed. "Yes," Eli admitted. "But we offered generous severance packages and job placement services, and we kept as many employees as we could." Naomi nodded slowly. "I also got a call from your brother." Surprise flashed across Eli's face. "James called you? When?" "About an hour ago," she said. "He told me to stay away from you." Eli's jaw tightened. "He had no right to do that." "That's what I told him," Naomi said with a small smile. "I'm sorry," Eli said sincerely. "James is protective, especially since Catherine died. He thinks I'm taking advantage of you," Naomi said, "that I'm complicating your life when you're finally moving forward." Pain flickered in Eli's eyes. "Moving forward," he repeated softly, "as if it's that simple." "Isn't it?" Naomi asked. "Isn't that what we're both supposed to be doing? Moving forward, moving on, getting over it?" "Is that what you're doing?" Eli asked. "With David?" Naomi looked down at her hands. "I thought I was, until I met you." The admission hung in the air between them. Eli leaned forward, his expression intense. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Naomi said carefully, "that for months after the divorce I was just going through the motions, existing, not living. And then you sat down at my table, and for the first time I felt seen, like someone understood what I was going through without me having to explain it." "I did understand," Eli said quietly. "I still do." "Even though our situations are different?" Naomi asked. "Your wife died. My husband cheated and lied and left. Loss is loss," Eli said simply. "The circumstances are different, but the emptiness feels the same." Naomi felt tears threatening, and blinked them back. "Why didn't you tell me who you were from the beginning?" Eli sighed, running a hand through his hair. "At first I was just curious. I'd seen your photo in the company files, read about you in the acquisition reports. And then suddenly, there you were, sitting alone with an extra plate of food. And after, when we kept meeting, I told myself I would tell you each time," he said. "But the longer I waited, the harder it became. And selfishly, I didn't want to ruin what we had." Those dinners were the first time I'd felt normal since Catherine died. Naomi understood that feeling all too well. "I stopped ordering the extra meal," she said softly. Eli looked at her, a question in his eyes. "After our first dinner together," she clarified, "I realized how pathetic it was ordering food for a ghost." "It wasn't pathetic," Eli said firmly. "It was your way of holding on to what you'd lost. We all do that in different ways." He gestured around the apartment. "This place is exactly the same as when Catherine was alive. Her clothes are still in the closet. Her books are still on the shelf. I haven't changed a thing in 2 years." The confession broke Naomi's heart. "Oh, Eli, James says I'm stuck," Eli continued, "that I need to move on, sell the apartment, donate her things, date someone new." He met Naomi's eyes. "Maybe he's right, but the thought of erasing her from my life, it feels like a betrayal," Naomi finished for him. "Yes," he agreed, looking relieved that she understood. "Exactly that. I felt the same way about divorcing David," Naomi admitted, "like I was betraying our history, our promises, everything we'd built together. What changed your mind?" "I realized I was betraying myself by staying," she said simply, "accepting his lies, his absences, his disrespect. That was the real betrayal." Eli nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about what you said at the park, about needing time." "Yes, I respect that," he said, "and I want you to know that I'll wait, however long you need." The sincerity in his voice made her heart ache. "I've missed our dinners," she confessed. A small smile appeared on his face. "Me too." "But I don't think we can go back to Bellini's," Naomi said. "Too many ghosts." "Both yours and mine," Eli agreed. "So where does that leave us?" Naomi asked. Eli looked thoughtful. "Maybe we start somewhere new, a different restaurant, a clean slate." "A clean slate," Naomi repeated. "Is that even possible, with everything that's happened?" "I don't know," Eli said honestly, "but I'd like to try, if you would." Before Naomi could answer, Eli's phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. "It's James. I should take this." He stepped into the other room, his voice low but tense. Naomi took the opportunity to look around the apartment more closely. On a desk in the corner, she spotted a familiar folder labeled Clark Enterprises. Next to it was another labeled Naomi Clark. Her blood ran cold. Moving quietly, she went to the desk and opened the second folder. Inside were newspaper clippings about her graphic design work, copies of her divorce papers, financial statements, even a background check. Everything about her life neatly documented and analyzed. "I'm sorry about that," Eli said, returning to the room. He stopped when he saw her at his desk, the open folder in her hands. "What is this?" Naomi asked, her voice shaking. Eli's face paled. "I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been investigating me? That you have copies of my divorce papers, my financial records?" She held up the folder. "What is this, Eli? Some kind of corporate espionage?" "No," he said quickly. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" she demanded. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been collecting information on me for months." "Not months," he corrected. "Just since I met you. I wanted to understand what happened with the divorce, how our acquisition affected you." "So you invaded my privacy?" Naomi felt sick. "You could have just asked me." "How?" Eli challenged. "How could I have asked you without revealing who I was, without admitting that my company helped your ex-husband cheat you in the divorce? So instead you compiled a dossier on me?" Naomi threw the folder back on the desk. "Were our dinners just research too? A way to get more information?" "No." Eli looked devastated. "Those dinners meant everything to me." "I don't know what to believe anymore," Naomi said, grabbing her purse. "I need to go." "Naomi, please." Eli reached for her hand. "Let me explain properly." She pulled away. "I think you've explained enough." As she turned to leave, the apartment door opened and James Bennett walked in, stopping short when he saw her. "What is she doing here?" he demanded, looking at Eli. "Not now, James," Eli warned. "Yes, now," James insisted. "I told you this was a bad idea. I told her to stay away from you. You had no right to contact her," Eli said, his voice hard. "I had every right," James shot back. "As your brother and your business partner. This woman is a liability, Eli. Her ex-husband is threatening to sue us for unfair business practices. The last thing we need is you getting involved with his ex-wife." "David is suing you?" Naomi asked, momentarily distracted from her anger. "He's threatening to," James clarified. "He claims we misrepresented our intentions during the acquisition." "Did you?" Naomi asked, looking at Eli. Eli hesitated. "Not legally, no. But ethically," she pressed. "Business acquisitions are complicated," Eli said, not quite answering her question. "There are always different interpretations of events. And this is exactly why you two shouldn't be involved," James interjected. "You're on opposite sides of a potential legal battle." "We're not involved," Naomi said firmly. "And after today, we won't be in contact at all." Pain flashed across Eli's face. "Naomi, don't say that. What would you have me say?" she asked, her voice breaking. "That I'm okay with you investigating me? That I don't mind being caught in the middle of your business feud with my ex-husband?" "I never meant to hurt you," Eli said softly. "But you did," Naomi replied, "just like David did. Different circumstances, same result." Without waiting for a response, she walked out of the apartment, ignoring Eli calling her name. In the elevator, she leaned against the wall, fighting back tears. How could she have been so foolish? How could she have let herself care for a man who had been deceiving her from the beginning? As she drove home, her phone rang repeatedly, Eli calling, no doubt. She ignored it, focusing on the road through blurred vision. At home, she found Alicia waiting on her porch. "Where have you been?" her sister demanded. "I've been calling for hours." "I went to see Eli," Naomi admitted, unlocking her door with shaking hands. "And?" Alicia followed her inside. "And it was a mistake," Naomi said, collapsing onto the couch. "He had a folder on me, Alicia. Financial records, divorce papers, everything." "What?" Alicia looked shocked. "Like a stalker?" "Like a businessman doing research," Naomi corrected bitterly. "And his brother showed up, saying David is threatening to sue their company." "Oh, Naomi." Alicia sat beside her, putting an arm around her shoulders. "I'm so sorry." "I thought he understood me," Naomi said, the tears finally coming. "I thought he was different." "Men like that are never different," Alicia said gently. "They use people, it's what they do." But even as she nodded in agreement, Naomi couldn't reconcile the Eli she'd come to know, kind, patient, wounded, with the calculating businessman who kept files on her. Which version was real? The man who sat across from her at Bellini's, sharing her pain without judgment, or the corporate executive who had helped destroy her ex-husband's company and then compiled a dossier on her? Her phone rang again. Eli's name flashed on the screen. "Don't answer it," Alicia advised. This time Naomi didn't. But as night fell and Alicia finally went home, she found herself staring at her phone, at the dozen missed calls and text messages from Eli. Against her better judgment, she opened the texts. "Naomi, please let me explain," the first one read. "It's not what you think," said another. The most recent one, sent just minutes ago, simply said, "I'll be at Bellini's next Friday, 7 p.m. Our table, please come." Naomi set the phone down, her mind a jumble of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to delete his number and never speak to him again. But another part, the part that had felt alive for the first time in months when she was with him, couldn't let go so easily. As she got ready for bed, she noticed the wedding photo still on her mantel. Without thinking, she picked it up and put it in a drawer. Maybe it was time to stop feeding ghosts, as she'd once told Eli. Maybe it was time to decide what she really wanted, not what David had wanted, not what Alicia thought she should want, not even what Eli hoped for. Just what she, Naomi Clark, wanted for her life going forward. But as she drifted off to sleep, one question remained unanswered. Would she go to Bellini's next Friday? And if she did, what would she say to the man who had both hurt her and healed her in ways she was only beginning to understand? The week dragged by for Naomi. She threw herself into work, accepting more freelance projects than she could reasonably handle, just to keep her mind occupied. But every time her phone rang, her heart jumped, hoping it might be Eli. He'd stopped calling after Monday, stopped texting too. The silence was almost worse than the constant attempts to reach her had been. Alicia checked in daily, bringing food Naomi barely touched and offering advice she barely heard. "You need to eat something," her sister insisted on Thursday evening, watching Naomi push pasta around her plate. "I'm not hungry," Naomi replied, setting down her fork. "This isn't healthy," Alicia said gently. "You can't keep obsessing over him." "I'm not obsessing. Then why haven't you been sleeping? Why aren't you eating?" Naomi sighed. I don't know what to do, Alicia. Part of me never wants to see him again, but another part misses him. Alicia finished for her. Is that crazy? After everything? Alicia sat back, studying her sister's face. Maybe not crazy, but definitely complicated. He asked me to meet him at Bellini's tomorrow. Our usual time, our usual table. And you're considering it? Alicia sounded surprised. I don't know, Naomi admitted. Every time I think I've decided not to go, I remember how it felt to sit across from him. How for the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel broken. Alicia reached across the table and took her hand. Listen to me, Naomi. You are not broken. You never were. David did a number on your confidence, but you've always been stronger than you give yourself credit for. Then why do I keep making the same mistakes? Naomi asked, tears threatening. Trusting men who lie to me. Eli lied to you, yes, Alicia acknowledged, but from what you've told me, his feelings for you seem genuine. Naomi looked up, surprised by her sister's change of tone. I thought you didn't trust him. I don't, Alicia said firmly, but I also don't think he's anything like David. David cheated on you for months, lied about finances, and tried to cheat you in the divorce. Eli, well, he had his own company to think about. It's not right what he did, but it's not the same. So you think I should meet him? I think, Alicia said carefully, that you need to decide what you want, not what David took from you, not what I think is best, not what Eli hopes for. What do you, Naomi Clark, want for your life? It was the same question Naomi had been asking herself all week, and she still didn't have an answer. After Alicia left, Naomi found herself standing in front of her closet, fingers brushing over a blue dress she hadn't worn since before the divorce. David had always liked her in blue. She pushed it aside and reached instead for a red wrap dress she'd bought on impulse last month, but had never worn. She wasn't going to Bellini's, she told herself as she laid the dress on her bed. She was just considering her options. Friday morning brought a surprise visitor. Naomi opened her door to find a tall, elegant woman in her 60s standing on her porch. Naomi Clark? The woman asked. Yes, Naomi replied cautiously. Can I help you? My name is Eleanor Bennett. I'm Eli's mother. Naomi's eyes widened. Mrs. Bennett, please call me Eleanor, the woman said with a warm smile that reminded Naomi instantly of Eli. May I come in? I won't take much of your time. Stunned, Naomi stepped back to let her in. Can I offer you some coffee? Tea? Tea would be lovely, Eleanor said, following her to the kitchen. As Naomi prepared the tea, she stole glances at Eli's mother. Eleanor was impeccably dressed in a simple but obviously expensive outfit, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob, but it was her eyes, kind, intelligent, and so like her son's, that caught Naomi's attention. I imagine you're wondering why I'm here, Eleanor said once they were seated at the kitchen table, cups of tea between them. The thought had crossed my mind, Naomi admitted. Eleanor smiled. My son doesn't know I'm here. He would probably be mortified if he did. Then why? Because he's suffering, Eleanor said simply. And from what I can see, so are you. Naomi looked down at her tea. It's complicated. Most worthwhile things are, Eleanor agreed. Naomi, I'm not here to pressure you or to make excuses for my son. What he did, keeping his identity from you, collecting information about you, was wrong. Then why are you here? To tell you something about Eli that you might not know, Eleanor said, her voice softening. Something that might help you understand him better. Naomi waited, curious despite herself. When Catherine died, Eleanor began, Eli shut down completely. For months he barely spoke, barely ate. He went through the motions at work, but the joy, the passion he'd always had, it was gone. Naomi nodded, remembering the shadow of grief she'd recognized in Eli's eyes that first night. James and I were worried he might never recover, Eleanor continued. He kept everything exactly as it had been when she was alive. He wouldn't talk about her, wouldn't look at photos, wouldn't visit her grave. That sounds like deep grief, Naomi said quietly. It was, Eleanor agreed, but it was more than that. It was guilt. Guilt? Naomi repeated, surprised. Why would he feel guilty? Eleanor sighed. The night Catherine died, they'd had an argument about work, about starting a family, about the future. Eli had been working long hours, expanding the company. Catherine felt neglected. I know how that feels, Naomi murmured. Yes, I imagine you do, Eleanor said with a sad smile. She left to visit her mother, still angry, and on her way home, her voice faltered. The accident happened, Naomi finished for her. Eleanor nodded. Eli has never forgiven himself. He believes if he'd been a better husband, more attentive, She wouldn't have been on that road at that time. That's not fair to himself, Naomi said. Accidents happen. It wasn't his fault. Try telling him that, Eleanor said with a rueful smile. My son is stubborn, and his grief has been a way of punishing himself. Until recently, Naomi said, understanding dawning. Until he met you, Eleanor confirmed. For the first time in 2 years, I saw a spark in his eyes when he talked about you. He smiled again. He started talking about the future again. He talked to you about me, Naomi asked, surprised. Not at first, Eleanor admitted. But after a few weeks, yes. He told me about this remarkable woman he'd met who understood loss without him having to explain it. The words warmed Naomi unexpectedly. And then, Eleanor continued, he told me who you really were, and that he was afraid of losing you once you knew the truth. He was right to be afraid, Naomi said, her voice hardening slightly. Finding those files was a shock, I'm sure, Eleanor finished for her, and inexcusable. But Naomi, I need you to know something. Eli is not a calculating man by nature. He's thoughtful, deliberate, yes, but never manipulative. Then why investigate me? Naomi asked, the hurt still fresh. Because that's how he processes information, Eleanor explained. It's what he did when Catherine died too. He collected newspaper clippings about the accident, police reports, witness statements. It was his way of trying to make sense of something senseless. Naomi hadn't considered that perspective. So the files weren't about business advantage? I can't speak to his initial interest, Eleanor said honestly. But knowing my son, once he met you, once he started to care for you, it became something else entirely. A way to understand your pain, perhaps. To help if he could, by keeping secrets from me. That part was fear, pure and simple, Eleanor said. Fear of losing the first good thing to happen to him in 2 years. They sat in silence for a moment, Naomi absorbing this new information. I'm not asking you to forgive him, Eleanor said finally. Only to consider that people make mistakes, especially when they're afraid. Eli has been afraid for a very long time. And now? Naomi asked. Now he's heartbroken, Eleanor said simply. But also, I think, finally awake. Finally feeling something besides guilt and grief. After Eleanor left, Naomi sat alone in her kitchen for a long time, thinking about everything she'd learned, about Eli's guilt over Catherine's death, about his way of processing grief through collecting information, about the spark that had returned to his eyes when he talked about her. When her phone rang, she was surprised to see it wasn't Eli or Alicia, but David. What do you want now? She answered, her patience worn thin. I heard you've been talking to Eleanor Bennett, David said without preamble. Naomi sat up straighter. How could you possibly know that? Are you watching my house? Don't be dramatic, David scoffed. Charleston is a small town. People notice when the matriarch of the Bennett family pays a visit to my ex-wife. What I do is none of your business, David, Naomi said firmly. It is when it affects my lawsuit, he countered. How will it look if my ex-wife is romantically involved with the CEO of the company I'm suing? There is no lawsuit yet, Naomi pointed out, and I'm not romantically involved with anyone. But you're considering it, David said, his voice hardening. I can hear it in your voice. You always were too trusting, Naomi, too willing to see the good in people who don't deserve it. The irony of her ex-husband saying this wasn't lost on her. Like I trusted you, you mean? That's different, David said dismissively. We had history. This guy, he's using you to get to me. Not everything is about you, David, Naomi said, suddenly tired of the conversation. Goodbye. She hung up before he could respond, then turned off her phone entirely. She needed to think without interruptions. At 6 o'clock, Naomi stood in front of her bathroom mirror, the red dress highlighting her olive skin and dark curls. She looked different somehow, stronger, more determined. For weeks she'd been letting other people define her life, David with his manipulative warnings, Alicia with her well-meaning but sometimes suffocating concern, even Eli with his secrets and half-truths. Tonight she would make her own choice for her own reasons. Bellini's was busy as always on a Friday night. Naomi arrived at 10 minutes to 7, her heart pounding as she approached the hostess. Your usual table, Ms. Clark? Monica asked with a smile. Yes, please, Naomi replied, surprised that her voice sounded so calm when her insides were churning. The corner booth by the window was empty, waiting for her. She slid in, choosing the side facing the door this time so she could see Eli when he arrived. If he arrived, perhaps he'd given up on her. But at exactly 7 o'clock, the door opened and Eli stepped inside. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes but still handsome in a simple grey suit. His eyes scanned the restaurant, landing on her with a mix of surprise and hope. that made her breath catch. He walked to the table slowly, as if giving her time to change her mind, to ask him to leave. "You came," he said softly, stopping beside the booth. "I did," Naomi acknowledged. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the seat across from her. She nodded, and he sat down, his eyes never leaving her face. "I wasn't sure you would be here," he admitted. "Neither was I," Naomi said honestly. "Not until about an hour ago. What changed your mind?" "Your mother came to see me," Naomi said, watching his reaction. Surprise, then embarrassment crossed his face. "She did what?" "Naomi, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "It's okay," Naomi interrupted. "She was illuminating." "What did she tell you?" Eli asked warily. "About Catherine, about the accident, about your guilt." Eli looked down at the table. "She shouldn't have done that." "I'm glad she did," Naomi said quietly. "It helped me understand some things." "Like what?" "Like why you keep files on people you care about. Why you couldn't tell me who you were. Why you've kept everything the same since she died." Eli met her eyes, vulnerability plain on his face. "And do you understand?" "Really?" "I think so," Naomi said. "You're afraid of change, of loss, of feeling anything that might make the guilt worse." "I failed her," Eli said, his voice barely audible. "I was so focused on the company, on success, that I neglected what mattered most. And then she was gone." "It wasn't your fault, Eli," Naomi said gently. "The accident wasn't your fault." "But if we hadn't argued—" "People argue," Naomi interrupted. "Couples disagree. It's part of any relationship. You can't blame yourself for something a truck driver did." Eli looked at her, pain and hope battling in his eyes. "That's what everyone says." "But you don't understand." "I do understand," Naomi insisted, "because I blamed myself for my marriage failing, for not seeing the signs earlier, for not being enough to keep David faithful and honest." "That wasn't your fault," Eli said immediately. "And Catherine's death wasn't yours," Naomi countered. "But we both carry the guilt anyway, don't we? It's easier somehow than accepting that some things are beyond our control." Monica approached their table tentatively. "Are you ready to order?" Naomi looked at Eli, a question in her eyes. Was he staying? Were they having dinner together again, despite everything? "2 glasses of red wine, please," Eli said, not taking his eyes off Naomi. "We need a few more minutes to decide on food." After Monica left, Eli reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching Naomi's. "I'm sorry," he said simply, "for not telling you who I was from the beginning, for keeping those files, for everything." "I know," Naomi said. She hesitated, then placed her hand on his. "I got a call from David today. He's still threatening to sue your company." Eli nodded. "James told me. It's mostly posturing. He doesn't have a case." "He also implied that you were only interested in me to get to him," Naomi said, watching Eli's reaction carefully. Anger flashed in his eyes. "That's absurd." "Is it?" Naomi pressed. "You had files on me, Eli. Information about my divorce, my finances." "Because I was trying to understand how our acquisition had affected you," Eli explained. "Not to use you against David." "Then why did you approach me that first night?" "Really?" Eli sighed, squeezing her hand gently. "Honestly, curiosity at first. I recognized you from the company files. I wondered why you were ordering 2 meals when you were clearly dining alone. And after? After it was because for the first time in 2 years I felt something besides grief when I was with you," Eli said, his voice thick with emotion. "You made me feel alive again, Naomi. Not happy exactly. Neither of us was ready for that, but present, in the moment, not drowning in the past." Naomi knew exactly what he meant. She'd felt the same way during their dinners. "I believe you," she said finally. Relief washed over his face. "Thank you. But," she continued, "we can't go back to how things were. Too much has happened." Pain replaced the relief in his eyes. "I understand." "No, you don't," Naomi said with a small smile. "I'm not saying I don't want to see you anymore. I'm saying we need to start fresh, with complete honesty this time." Hope dawned slowly on his face. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Naomi said carefully, "that we get to know each other properly. No secrets, no hidden agendas. Just 2 people who understand each other's pain, trying to figure out if there's something more between them." "I'd like that," Eli said, his smile reaching his eyes for the first time that evening. "Very much." Monica returned with their wine. "Have you decided on your meals?" Naomi looked at Eli, then back at Monica. "I'll have the salmon with lemon risotto," she said. "And he'll have the steak with garlic potatoes," Eli finished, his eyes warm as they met hers across the table. After Monica left, They sipped their wine in comfortable silence. Something had shifted between them yet again, but this time it felt right. A new beginning, rather than a return to the past. "There's something I should tell you," Eli said after a moment. "About the company." Naomi tensed slightly. "What about it?" "I've been thinking about what you said, about moving forward, not staying stuck in the past." He took a deep breath. "I'm making some changes, starting with my apartment. I'm donating Catherine's clothes, her books, keeping a few special things but letting the rest go." "That's a big step," Naomi said softly. "It's time," Eli said with a sad smile. "Catherine would have hated seeing me frozen in place for so long." "What other changes?" Naomi asked, sensing there was more. "I'm stepping back from daily operations at BDS," Eli said, "letting James take over as CEO. I'll still be on the board, still be involved in major decisions, but not consumed by it anymore." "Because of what happened with Catherine," Naomi guessed. Eli nodded. "Partly, and partly because I want time to figure out what really matters to me, what kind of life I want going forward." Their food arrived, steaming and fragrant. Naomi realized she was actually hungry for the first time in days. "What about you?" Eli asked as they ate. "Any changes in your life?" Naomi thought about the wedding photo she'd put away, about the red dress she'd never worn before tonight. "I'm thinking about expanding my business," she said, "taking on bigger clients, maybe hiring an assistant." "That sounds wonderful," Eli said sincerely. "And I've decided to sell my house," Naomi added. "Too many memories there, too much of the past." "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but somewhere new. Somewhere that's just mine, not ours." After dinner, they walked outside together, the warm evening air enveloping them. On the sidewalk, Eli turned to face her. "Can I see you again?" he asked, his voice hopeful but cautious. "Maybe somewhere besides Bellini's." Naomi smiled. "I'd like that. Tomorrow. There's a new cafe by the harbor I've been wanting to try." "Tomorrow," she agreed. He hesitated, then leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he kissed her cheek softly. "Good night, Naomi." "Good night, Eli." As she drove home, Naomi felt lighter than she had in months. Not healed, not yet, but heading in the right direction. Her phone rang as she pulled into her driveway. Alicia, of course. "Well," her sister demanded. "Did you go?" "Yes," Naomi admitted, unlocking her front door. "We talked. Really talked this time. And we're going to see where it goes," Naomi said simply. Slowly, honestly. "Are you sure about this?" Alicia asked, concern evident in her voice. "No," Naomi said with a small laugh. "I'm not sure about anything, but for the first time since the divorce, I'm not afraid of the uncertainty. I'm curious about it." After saying goodnight to her sister, Naomi wandered through her house, seeing it with new eyes. This had been her home with David for 8 years. Every room held memories, good and bad, but it wasn't her future. Just like the extra plate at Bellini's, it was time to let it go. 3 months later, Naomi stood in her new apartment, surrounded by moving boxes. The space was smaller than her house had been, but brighter, with large windows overlooking a small park. It felt like hers in a way the house never had, even before the divorce. Her phone rang. Eli, calling from the airport. "Just landed," he said when she answered. "How's moving day going?" "Chaotic," Naomi laughed. "But good. Alicia and the kids are here helping. Well, the kids are mostly jumping on bubble wrap, but it's the thought that counts. I'll come straight there from the airport," Eli promised. "Should I bring dinner?" "That would be perfect," Naomi said gratefully. "One salmon with lemon risotto coming up," he teased. "And don't forget your steak and potatoes," she replied, smiling. After hanging up, Naomi returned to unpacking. In the bottom of a box marked bedroom, she found something she'd forgotten about, the wedding photo she'd put away that night after discovering Eli's files. She held it for a long moment, looking at her younger self and the man she'd thought she'd spent her life with. Without regret, she placed the photo in a box labeled Donate. That chapter of her life was closed now. "Is that the last of it?" Alicia asked, coming into the room with a glass of water. "I think so," Naomi said, closing the donation box. "Just in time, too. Eli should be here soon." Alicia studied her sister's face. "You're happy," she observed. "I am," Naomi agreed, a little surprised to realize it was true. The past 3 months with Eli had been healing. They'd taken things slowly, getting to know each other properly this time. No secrets, no hidden agendas, just 2 people learning to trust again, to hope again. "He's good for you," Alicia admitted grudgingly. "I didn't think he would be, but he is." "Thank you for saying that," Naomi said, knowing how much it cost her protective sister to admit she'd been wrong about Eli. The doorbell rang, and Naomi went to answer it, her heart quickening at the sight of Eli standing there with takeout bags and a small bouquet of flowers. "Welcome home," he said, kissing her softly. Home. The word felt right, not just for the apartment, but for the feeling she had when she was with him. Safe, understood, valued. They were still figuring things out, still healing, still learning to let go of the past, but they were doing it together, one day at a time. Later that evening, after Alicia and the kids had gone home, Naomi and Eli sat on her new couch, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. "I have something for you," Eli said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small, gift-wrapped box. "What's this?" Naomi asked, surprised. "Just a housewarming gift," he said with a smile. "Open it." Inside the box was a beautiful silver frame, but it wasn't the frame that made Naomi's breath catch. It was the photo inside, a picture of her and Eli at the harbor from last weekend, both smiling at the camera, the sun setting behind them. "Our first photo together," Eli explained. "I thought you might like it for your new place." "It's perfect," Naomi said softly, tracing the frame with her finger. "Thank you." As she set the photo on her new coffee table, Naomi realized something important. For the first time since the divorce, maybe even before, she wasn't looking back anymore. She wasn't feeding ghosts or clinging to the past. She was looking forward to all the possibilities that lay ahead. Eli put his arm around her, and she leaned into his embrace, content in a way she hadn't thought possible again. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice warm in her ear. "The future," she said simply. "Our future." His arm tightened around her, and she felt him smile against her hair. "I like the sound of that." Outside, the sun was setting over Charleston, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day would dawn tomorrow, bringing with it new challenges, new joys, new possibilities. And this time, Naomi was ready for all of it. As she drifted off to sleep that night in her new bed, in her new home, Naomi's last thought was of Bellini's, of that corner booth by the window where it had all begun, where a lonely woman ordering 2 meals had met a grieving man who understood her pain without a word, and how sometimes healing begins in the most unexpected places, with the most unexpected people. In her purse, forgotten in the chaos of moving day, was the photo of her wedding day she'd found earlier. She hadn't thrown it away after all, just tucked it into a side pocket, out of sight, but not completely gone. Part of her wondered if she should keep it as a reminder of where she'd been, of how far she'd come. Another part wondered if holding on to it at all was a sign she wasn't as ready to move forward as she thought. That question would have to wait for another day. For tonight she was exactly where she wanted to be, looking ahead, not behind, feeding hope, not ghosts. And that was enough.